Have you ever thought that you might need a Phase I environmental site assessment, but your gut said that might be overkill and you're wondering if there might be other options? And at the same time, have you worried that skipping it could come back to bite you later? That tension is exactly what we're talking about today, the difference between a full Phase I environmental site assessment and lighter environmental property reviews, when each one actually makes sense, and how to avoid choosing the wrong one for your deal. By the end of this, you'll have a much clearer sense of what each option really does and which one fits your situation. Hey there, I'm Tate Hunter from RMA, your environmental experts. We help people make smart, informed decisions about environmental risk before they buy property. And before we go too far, if you ever need a hand sorting through environmental due diligence for a deal, you can reach out to us at RMA. All right, let's jump in. So to understand why these options are so different, you need a quick bit of background. Environmental liability in the United States is driven by a law called CERCLA. Under CERCLA, if there's contamination at a property, the current owner can be on the hook for cleanup, even if they didn't cause it and even if it happened years ago under a previous owner. Because of that, the government allows buyers to do a certain level of environmental homework before they purchase a property, basically as an insurance policy, to avoid paying for any cleanup of contamination that might be found later. That homework is called All Appropriate Inquiries, or AAI. ASTM is the group that writes the rule book for what that homework has to look like. And following those rules is how you conduct a Phase I, and that's how you get that insurance policy. Now, in plain English, that means this. If you did your environmental homework by the rules before buying the property, you can make a pretty good argument that you shouldn't be the one paying for cleanup if a problem is found later. So let's talk about your options. Option 1 is that full ASTM-compliant Phase I environmental site assessment. Again, this is the formal by-the-book option that protects you from CERCLA under AAI. It looks at how the property's been used over time, it checks environmental databases and records, it includes a site visit, and it evaluates whether there are any red flags called Recognized Environmental Conditions, or RECs, tied to the property. A Phase I shows that you did your homework the right way before buying. And that's why banks, attorneys, and investors often require one. They want something that they can rely on if there's ever a dispute about who's paying for cleanup if something is found later. So you can't really half do a Phase I. If you start changing the scope, you might still learn something, but you lose the ability to say that you did your homework exactly by the rules, and that's when you give up the protection that a Phase I provides. So option 2 is a lighter scope environmental property review. This is a more flexible, decision-focused option. It does not follow ASTM, it does not meet AAI, and it does not provide CERCLA protection. What it does do is helps you understand what you're buying. It's meant to catch obvious red flags and give you clarity before you move forward. For some deals, that's all that's needed. Maybe there's no lender involved. Maybe you're looking at multiple properties and you want a quick way to spot potential problems. Maybe you just want a gut check before committing to a full Phase I. So why would you forfeit the protection that a Phase I provides in favor of a lighter review? Well, it all comes down to cost, timelines, and risk tolerance. A lighter scope environmental property review is cheaper than a full Phase I ESA, and they can generally be completed faster. Now that said, the price difference isn't always as big as people expect. Even with a lighter review, a site visit is still going to be required, records still need to be reviewed, and experienced environmental professionals are still applying judgment. You're still paying for travel, expertise, and time in the field, not just the detail of the report. A Phase I costs more because it has a defined scope and specific requirements that have to be completed and documented. That takes more time and effort, and it's what allows you to say you did your environmental homework by the rules before buying. So if you need CERCLA protection or a report that lenders, attorneys, or investors can rely on, that extra cost and time usually makes sense. On the other hand, if you don't have a lender requiring a Phase I, or you have a site with very limited past use, a lighter review can be a great way to understand your property's environmental shape faster and save a few dollars. Now, I know you want numbers, so figure if your Phase I would be quoted at $6,000, a lighter review of that same property might land more like $4,500. If you're trying to get a sense of cost for your situation, our Phase I pricing calculator is a great place to start, even if you think a lighter review might be the better fit. The calculator is going to put you in the right ballpark, and in most cases, a lighter scope review will come in a bit less than what you see there. So what does this look like in the real world? Well, if you're buying an industrial property, especially with lender financing, a full Phase I is usually the right move. In fact, it's probably going to be required. The same thing if the property has had a long or unclear history, or if neighboring sites have had heavy use or regulated activities in the past. On the other hand, if you're looking at something like cleared land or a new commercial site where the goal is simply to understand the past use and make sure there are no obvious red flags before moving forward, and you've got no lender involved, a lighter review can make a lot of sense. We also see lighter reviews used early in the process, especially when someone is evaluating multiple properties. Instead of jumping straight into a full phase one on every site, a lighter review can help you narrow the field and decide which properties are worth taking that next step on. So ask yourself, what do you need the report to do for you? If you want it to show that you did your homework by the rules before buying and you want the full protection if something comes up later, a full phase one is the right move. If you're looking for cheaper, faster answers to help make a decision, a lighter environmental review may be enough. At RMA, we do both full ASTM-compliant Phase I environmental site assessments and lighter scope environmental property reviews. We don't push one by default. Our goal is to help you avoid spending money on the wrong thing or skipping something that ends up costing you way more later. So if you're not sure which option fits your deal, just reach out to us. We're always happy to talk it through and help you choose the right path with confidence.